Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Doctor to Doctor in the chat room. I am your host, and I have your other half of your host here, Dr. West. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Shaw. We are so happy to have you guys back yet another Saturday to talk about relevant topics that impact our communities and our world. And as I've said, as I've been saying lately, I know things are getting a little better with COVID, but we still want you guys to take those and use those necessary precautions to stay safe. Keep those masks on for a little while longer. Get your vaccinations if you are in health and can do that. Make sure that you are physically distancing yourselves and not congregating in large crowds when you don't have to. And just as I always say, just stay safe. I want to see everybody on the other side of this. We're not quite there yet, but we are hopefully on our way. Again, I want to congratulate all the graduates and everybody that has moved into, reached that milestone and moving into something new, whether it's another grade level or you graduated from college or you got another graduate degree. Hats off to you guys. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you do in our communities. Nicole West, Dr. Nicole West, hey.
Yes, ma'am. Should we give them another round of applause?
I don't know. I don't know, because your applause are so pitiful. I think let's just clap. Congratulations, guys. We are so happy to have our special guest, who Dr. West will tell you more about here in just a moment, in the spirit of staying in the Mental Health Awareness Month and focusing on the mental health of our children. We just kind of wanted to stay in that vein for a minute, as even though we will be moving out of the month of May soon, we will still probably keep this as our focus for a moment. But Dr. West, tell us a little bit about who we have here today after you tell your folks hello.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. So we are really excited to have Dr. Sarita Wilson here. She is an ordained elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. She also serves as associate minister at St. Andrew AME Church here in Memphis. Dr. Wilson is a board certified chaplain, a pediatric chaplain, and certified grief counselor. And she serves as the director of spiritual care at Le Bonheur. Really interesting fact here. She is the founder and director of Dance the World Ministries.
Okay.
I want to hear a little bit more about that. So there's a ton of information about Dr. Sarita that we could share with y'all, but that would take probably the whole rest of the show, because her resume is serious. But let's just welcome her. Thank you, Dr. Sarita Wilson, for being with us today. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you for having me. I am honored to just share this moment in time with both of you, Dr. West and Dr. Shaw. So thank you very much.
And Dr. Wilson, I have to tell you, you hear that thick accent that Dr. West has. So I have banned her from saying y'all. I just figured, when you say y'all, it's supposed to have a certain effect, right? And so it loses everything when she says it. So if she tries to slip it in there, I will catch her for you, okay?
She just won't let me be great, Dr. Wilson.
It is okay. It is okay. I am not a Memphis native, but as long as I've been here, I have learned how to say y'all.
See what I'm saying?
And everybody keeps saying, you are not a Southern. I'm like, I'm from Virginia, South. It is South, but it's a different South.
Well, I'm originally from New York, but I'm working on it.
It's okay. It is all right.
I will give you a little bit of time, friend. I promise.
Thank you for the grace. Dr. Wilson, can you tell us a little bit about your dance ministry? That sounds
absolutely. I am a lifelong dancer, and I literally have been dancing since I was 3. And, God speaks to all of us in his own special way, and he knows what it takes for all of us to, come into where he wants us to be. And so dancing for years and years, and then I danced all through college. And then I started teaching at different after school programs, and different churches would invite me to just do after school activities or work with their children. But God took that and turned it into ministry for me. And so it started off as, just teaching kids without the ministry part, without the anointing. And the anointing fell and it became this huge dance ministry. And so I've been blessed to, over the years, I started it at St. Andrew. And over the years, I have built it. At one point, we had about 100 members in our dance ministry here at St. Andrew AME Church in Memphis, Tennessee, men, women, children, and youth. And we traveled the country. I've traveled the country teaching. New York, I go to Allen Cathedral every other year in
Wow.
Lakes Church. But we I've written a book called Dance the Word, teaching other churches how to start their own dance ministries. But it's just what I do, and so it's part of I believe that as much as you can preach the word, you can sing the word, and you can dance the word. So we
Wow.
dance sermons, and God has been really faithful and really gracious with me with dance ministry. So that's the big part of what I do. That's really who I am. And as I was working on my doctorate is in pastoral counseling and care. So what I did was I took dance and used it as African American women. Traditionally we don't like to seek counseling. And so I took it and did a study on how the impact of liturgical dance on self-report depression and anxiety, and found that for us as Black women, women of faith, churched women, how different aspects of worship really do help us with our mood disorders, with our our spiritual disconnects. And so we use dance as a form
Interesting.
of therapy. So there's big world of dance therapy, but I segregated it and did liturgical dance, praise dance, worship dance,
Yeah.
as a form of therapy for us as Black women.
Wow.
We didn't even know we was gonna get that.
Right? Fascinating. So,
Yeah. So
is this open to, I don't know, the public? Like if there's a
yes.
mom who has, okay, so how do people get connected with that? With
So
that?
that's the best part, is that for me, it's not necessarily about how skilled or how trained you are as a dancer. It's what's in your heart, because dance is a language, it speaks,
Yes.
and your body does not lie. And so I do workshops. People get groups together and they, do a group workshop with some of their good girlfriends, or churches will bring me in and do workshops. We've done some workshops with some churches, just, in terms of all of the social unrest that we've had as African Americans, as women. So I've gone into some churches and used dance as a form of healing for some of the social injustices that we've been kind of carrying in our bodies and in our minds and in our spirits. So yeah.
Yes.
It's been, yeah. So I do either your church or Church Health Center. I've hosted some there. So in the community or in special churches, or, you get a couple of people together and you got enough space in your house, we can go there too.
So people can just contact you through St. Andrew's Church.
They can, or I can leave my contact information at the end of our session, and people can contact me there as well through my email. I have email and a website, and those are probably the easiest ways.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I was reading a little bit more about you and your focus on self-care from the spiritual perspective.
Mhm.
And then talk to us a little bit about the stigma associated with mental health that you work with African American families and in the African American community to kind of help us destigmatize
Yeah.
and really go get that help that we need.
Absolutely. I think that self-care and mental health care is just as important, if not more important, than our physical health care. Because
Yeah.
there's no disconnect between spirit, soul, and body. We are all very dimensional people. We're not one dimensional. It's just not our physical health. And what impacts one part of us at some point in time, if we don't take care of it, will impact the rest of us positively or negatively. And so, as we know, there is a stigma around mental health care, especially for African Americans. As women and as African American women, we've always carried the burden of the world in our families on our backs. We've always had the superwoman complex. We've always felt like, I'm just going to pray about it and keep moving. We've always felt like, I got it, I can handle it, I don't have time for that. But at some point, we've got to stop and slow down. And when we start to take the layers off of all that, we find out really how raw we are under all of that.
Mhm.
And so I believe that just like we go to our OBGYN once a year, it's just like we go to the dentist twice a year, we go to the eye doctor, we need a mental health checkup
Yeah.
because we all have mental health concerns. We may not all have mental health diseases or diagnoses or disorders, but we all have mental health concerns. We all have moments of blues or depression or sadness. We all have bouts of anxiety when something's happening around us. And sometimes it's just a good thing, sometimes you can't just talk to your mama or your best friend. They may not understand, but sometimes you just need that neutral party to just decompress, unlayer some of that stuff and just have a woosah moment and release a lot of that stuff. We carry so much, tense all up in here. We have to, and dance helps with that too, but we have to release some of that. And some of it is verbal and some of it is physiological, where we have to find those places of release. And so part of, eradicating the stigma is normalizing it. It's normal to the OGYN. It's normal to go to the dentist. It's normal to go to the eye doctor. So it should be normal to go to a mental health counselor, psychologist, social worker, whomever, whatever your preference is, once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So with you being an ordained elder and associate minister, do you find that you are often having these conversations with your church community? And how do people, especially in the African American community, how receptive do you find that we are when you have those conversations?
It's evolving, and I'm grateful to see it slowly, and I mean slowly, starting to kind of work its way around. But I think it starts in the pulpit. It has to start in the pulpit, and I'm grateful that I've been at a church where that's always been preached from, from the pulpit and from leadership. But you have to be able to get to the head of the church first, because you have to get the senior pastor to know and understand. You can't pray all this away. And I think a lot of that comes with pastor education.
Yeah.
As pastors, especially male pastors, which is a male dominated field, right? Very stuck in tradition. At this day and age, we got to unlayer some of these traditions. As more women are becoming ordained and different denominations are bringing more women into the pulpit, we've got to start at the top and having conversations where, number one, we educate pastors, because they do need to be educated, whether they realize it or not. It's not just the Bible, it's prayer and it's faith and counseling. All of that has to go hand in hand. And
Right.
so I think it starts with educating the pastors. You can't go into a congregation and try to get people to buy onto something if their pastor hasn't bought into it, because as a community, we still looking at the pastor. As Black people, but the pastor said, but the
Yeah.
pastor said, my pastor said. And
Yeah.
so if the pastor's not saying the same thing, then it's going to be really hard to change or to kind of get the thinking and the thought pattern of other people to kind of evolve. But if the pastor is saying and endorsing therapy and counseling outside of, just coming and have a conversation with the pastor who really doesn't have the tools and the resources to help you in all cases, then I think that's where we have to start.
So Dr. West, I would love to ask Dr. Wilson this, having been a person in ministry in the church for most of my life, a PK and, and all of that. I don't know that I've heard many messages or sermons that were centered around biblical characters and their mental health. I will say that, I've heard a lot of sermons where the pastors try to make it relevant, right, to life and what's going on in life, but to just be so intentional.
Yeah.
The woman at the well, we hear about some of her issues, right?
Yeah.
But I've never really heard it that deep. And I think it's time we get that deep. What do you think?
I agree with you. And you're right. We don't hear it that deep unless you're in a very specific forum for that. But there's so many stories. And if you even just look at very common biblical characters like David, if you read the Psalms,
yes,
David was in distress. He was in deep distress. He had all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
If you look, if you go and you look at Hannah and how she cried and cried and cried and cried, when she lost her child and all those types of stories. If you look at Jesus, who wept in the Garden of Gethsemane to the point of blood and tears. I mean, there are so many stories, and a pastor or a preacher has to be willing to dig deep enough into the text to see beyond the surface message, because there is so much. The Bible is rich with so many stories of infertility and people that have postpartum depression and distress over relationships. And I mean, it's all so relatable, but it talks not just about the relational part, but how they were distressed to the point where they couldn't pray, to the point where they couldn't feel God, or they felt disconnected. I mean, all of that is in there, and we all have had those moments in life where we've been despondent, or we've been in spiritual drought of distress, and we've been emotionally, it's so rich. So we have to be willing. I think you're right. And even Sunday morning, it is an appropriate place to have those moments and to teach those sermons. You don't have to have a separate session or anything like that. That Sunday morning is a great place to start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I'm a PK too, so I'm with you, Dr. Shaw. I'm with you. I'm a PK too.
Love it, love it. And I remember someone saying, literally any problem you encounter in life, there is it's the answer is in scripture. It's
Mhm.
just about finding where and figuring it out, and then applying it
Yeah.
to that situation. And so what better way to do that? I mean, we talk about all kinds of other issues in life that's relatable to, like you were saying, David or Paul, or so why not do that with mental health? I
Right.
mean, it definitely, it makes it relatable and it's applicable. Yeah, I think that if we could move towards something like that, that would be really amazing. It might be a game
Absolutely.
changer for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Yeah, I
Definitely
think
a game changer because, and I apologize for cutting you off, definitely a
that's
game
okay.
changer because one thing that Dr. Wilson said earlier, about, what the pastor said, but the pastor said, I mean, let's just be honest, some people are closer to worshiping
Hmm.
pastor, right?
Yeah.
Than they are.
That's
I mean,
it.
sometimes we get it confused. I've heard my dad say often during this pandemic, when people like say, I'll be so glad when I go back to church, the church is within us. It's in us.
Right.
Like
Right.
we left the building. We didn't leave the church
That's
Right.
right.
if we were there
That's
for the
right.
right reasons. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. You're right. And I think I've talked to so many people who are having all these internal conflicts because they're dealing with these mental health issues, but they're conflicted in their faith and their faith construct on what to believe and not to believe, because now they're getting all these images and getting all these messages about it's okay to have mental health treatment. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay. And where the church is saying you're okay, just put a prayer on it. You'll be fine. Trust God and have faith. And one does not negate the other. And so
Right.
you don't
Yeah.
have to feel so conflicted.
Yeah.
They have to work hand in hand. And until we as the church community learn how to work hand in hand with the mental health community, because it's all part of holistic care, healing is all part of the big healing process.
Hmm.
Until we can get to that place, people are gonna have those internal, wrestling with self. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we got to figure out how to handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So more with Dr. Sarita Wilson when we come back from break, guys. We'll be right back on 94.7 FM.